Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Employee Experience Reimagining EX to Build a Thriving Workplace event, part of the HR Congress Forum series brought to you by Workhuman. I'm your host, Thomas Papp, Head of Client Experience here at the HR Congress team. Workhuman is shaping the future of work and the world through its people and global technology, helping forward-thinking companies energize their cultures, unlock their employees' passion and potential, and unite their workforce around a shared purpose. Workhuman is building cultures of gratitude and human connectedness for leading global brands, and that starts with their own. Over the last 2 years, the pandemic has forced businesses across the world to fundamentally rethink how their workplace functions and what this means to their employees, finances, and their future. With COVID-19 now losing its grip, and with leaders and employees now settling into the new normal, HR executives are recognizing that effective employee experience is now more critical than ever to ensure they attract the right talent at the right time of the Great Resignation, ensure staff retention, and future-proof their business in times of uncertainty and volatility, war, global warming, inflation, declining population, to name a few. The power has now shifted over to employees for good. Many companies that got employee experience wrong at this critical time now face the challenge not only to retain existing employees, but also to attract the right new ones. Those that have reimagined EX effectively, however, have gone on to build thriving organizations with employees that are more engaged than ever. Some of the key questions that come into mind: how can HR leaders ensure their company revolves around its people and considers their specific needs? How can they ensure employees' recognition enables their companies to thrive? How can they use the shift to remote work as a real opportunity to drive employee experience? We shall have 3 sessions, starting with Niamh Graham, Senior Vice President of Global Human Experience at Workhuman. Niamh shall be speaking about transforming workplaces through effective and accessible employee recognition. The second session shall be by Martin Siener. Martin is a global head of employee experience at Credit Suisse, and Martin shall be giving us a talk about driving employee experience through infusing human centricity into the bloodstream of the organization. We shall be closing off the day with a 30-minute panel discussion, rethinking employee experience in the work from home or hybrid context. Olivier Dubisson, head of people experience at Novartis, David Burka, Senior Director of Talent Acquisition Employee Brand from Workhuman, and Niara Katabrana, Head of Employee Experience at Randstad. This event is part of a series that we are organizing for Workhuman. Employee experience is the first one, then culture and leadership and future of work, which is happening throughout the year until November. And now I would like to welcome Niamh Graham, Senior Vice President of Global Human Experience at Workhuman. Niamh is responsible for the company's people and culture globally, empowering a people-first workplace culture of positivity and respect for all. Niamh, welcome. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Delighted to be here. Good morning on this gorgeous Thursday morning here in Dublin, where I'm based. So this morning, I'm going to speak to you about, or share with you, some insights in terms of the research and findings that we discovered and uncovered through a global research study that we did with Gallup earlier this year. We spoke to thousands upon thousands of employees in different companies throughout the world, 13,000, 15,000 employees, and half of them were based in Europe. So we got a blend from, a diverse geo-cultural perspective, and in terms of different size companies and organizations. So before we get stuck into the research, and just to kind of highlight, I suppose, some of the key points that Thomas was just mentioning there, we've all gone through dramatic change over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. And we're seeing different shifts and trends, whether you're in HR or whether you're a leader in an organization. And definitely some of those key trends are trends and areas of focus that we need to prioritize. We all need to prioritize on them, whether it's job security, change fatigue, and all of these have been brought about, predominantly as a result of the pandemic. When you think about the volume of change that we've all had to experience, how we've had to navigate and change our ways of working, going into a hybrid working, fully remote first, obviously, then hybrid, and how that all of the changes that came with that from a leadership perspective, from a technical perspective. And now I feel we're shifting gears again. It's September already, where a lot of companies are shifting gears again. There's a whole new kind of range of change that many companies are embarking as they activate what their future ways of working looks like. Come September, there's lots going on from a socioeconomic perspective. A lot of people are talking about, is there a recession coming, inflation rates, cost of living, all of those different things, and job security or insecurity, as the case may be, is definitely something that's front of mind for a lot of people in a lot of organizations. A couple of other things, well-being, maybe just to talk a little bit about that. Well-being, DEI, they've always been important, but I think they're now hugely more important than ever before as a result of how we're working these days, how we're operating, and to be fully inclusive, to embrace diversity, to be very equitable is massively important. When you're not actually seeing everybody, you're not actually interacting with everybody on a daily basis, and how people are embracing their new ways of working, well-being, mental, physical, life well-being, and having a major focus on that. So they're just a couple of the priorities. And as a result of the research that we did with Gallup, very much the focus on some of these areas that are of concern. Maybe it's a cost concern, maybe it's a turnover concern, and maybe it's a people concern. The research that we did with Gallup resulted in and reflected that the role of recognition plays a massive, important, integral, strategic role in relation to mitigating and reducing a lot of the concerns, costs, challenges that we're all experiencing at the moment. So moving on to the research, this is it, transforming workplaces through recognition. Unleashing the human element at work. I mean, we're called Work Human, and we call the people that work with us our humans at Work Human, and very centered and focused on our human-based strategy, but also our human technology that we use as well, of course. Now, you will get an opportunity to download this report at the end of the session, so fear not, you will be able to access it. I will be going through a lot of the data points in relation to the survey results, so stay with me, but it's all available at the end in this survey report. So one of the key findings that we had, we spoke to a lot of employees and a lot of leaders, and one of the key results from that survey or from that question is there's not enough recognition going around, and that came from both sides, if you like. When we spoke to MPs, for example, and senior leaders, and we're going to share some of the results here. This is the results from the senior leaders that we spoke with. They said that, and these results are really, really high. So if you think about a strategic recognition program, if you think about a social strategic recognition program, this is what some leaders found when they reflected on their own organizations. When they had, whether they had a strategic program or not, this is how they felt about it. 81% felt that it wasn't a strategic priority in their own organization. 73% said they didn't receive any training in relation to the recognition program. So they, as leaders, how are they going to lead by example, kind of set the stage in relation to what recognition should look like, how it's linked to company values and behaviors, for example. There's a lot in there that gets missed, very high percentage. And 64% said they had no budget allocated to recognition, again, which is massive. When you think about, a percentage such as 1% of payroll towards a recognition program, that can make a dramatic impact. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of those business and some of those key performance indicators that actually reveal, investment in recognition does very much help in relation to some of those costs. And again, we'll touch on those in a moment or two. So very stark findings, very high, and surprisingly so of organizations that we surveyed. And then from the employees' perspective, Again, conversely, you know, in relation to what they feel about their programs, only, and again, these are small on the converse side, if you like, so only a quarter or nearly a quarter of those employees that were surveyed, you know, felt that their recognition program was related to work-related milestones. Only 15% of those felt it was related to or included life events that are unrelated to work, if you like, whether it's buying a new house, whether it's, you know, getting married, having a new baby, you know, a new pet, you know, and the professional side of some of those milestones would be, for example, years of service or achieving educational milestones or a promotion, for example. So very low percentages in relation to how employees are feeling about those recognition programs. 22%, you know, their organization used a digital recognition. So that means the rest is offline, you know, whether it's items, you know, pen or something like that, who knows what it is, but, you know, very low in relation to, we're all living in a digital world right now. And so 22% is a very low number when you're trying to reach all of your employees. Connection and culture are massively important now based on some of those challenges we talked about earlier on. And so having an online program, having a digital recognition program is really, really important. And then 36% of employees say that their organization has a recognition program. So again, you know, only a third of those that were surveyed have a recognition program. And again, if we look geographically, that percentage was different across different countries. For example, the UK was different than Germany, for example. In Germany, the percentages were a lot lower. I think they were in around, and Ireland actually, they were in around the 25%. Whereas we looked at countries like you know, the UK and a couple of other countries, they were kind of in the 40s. So differences definitely from a geographic perspective and what companies are using in different areas around the world. So if that's the kind of the perspective from leaders and from employees, well, where does recognition hit the mark? What does success look like? So in terms of those recognized employees, these are some of the kind of the results that they shared with us, or these are the results that they shared with us, and this is how they feel. So on the left-hand side, we have, you know, a very high percentage, you know, 73% of those surveyed, you know, are less likely to feel burnt out. Obviously, we know this has been a very stressful period. If you have a recognition program that connects your employees, that gives that sense of purpose and belonging, they're going to feel more included, and they're going to feel like that they have less stress and feel less isolated, if you like. Less likely to looking out for other job opportunities. So that's positive from a turnover perspective. More likely to be thriving in their lives, 44%. Again, really important from a well-being, some of the challenges we spoke about earlier on. And then we look at the multiplier effects. I mean, these are staggering in relation to either 5 times or 4 times. Those that are recognized in their companies are, you know, 4 times as likely to be more engaged, as likely to see a path growth in their organization, and to recommend their organization to others. Positive in terms of how that makes people feel, in terms of their work-related contributions and opportunities, as well as their own personal and the life events. And that's part of the magic, you know, connecting work and life. In terms of, you know, many of us have been spending most of our time in our homes, exactly, you know, getting to know one another. So really important to have that blend. And certainly the statistics show and prove how important it is, and will continue to be going forward as well. Absolutely. So taking it a little step further then, the 5 pillars of recognition, what are they? The 5 pillars of recognition that have the most impact. You see along the top line there and highlighted there. So recognition programs that are fulfilling, that are authentic, that are embedded in a company's culture, that are individualized or personalized, and that are equitable, that are fair across the board. And again, some of the results were staggering, were massively interesting, and thinking about how companies should react and reflect on this in relation to their own organizations and what they should do moving forward in relation to recognition and the role that it plays from a performance perspective, from a retention perspective, from a culture perspective, etc., etc. It's massive. So from a fulfillment perspective, how did employees feel? Only a fifth felt that they got the right amount. So if it's a monetary value award or recognition moment, only 1/5 felt that it was actually appropriate for the contribution that they gave to the organization. Only a third felt that it was authentic, so that maybe, it didn't feel like they actually made a difference to the organization. Maybe it was faint praise, maybe it wasn't done in the right way, maybe it wasn't celebrated, maybe it wasn't crowdsourced, whereby peers got to congratulate and contribute as well. Embedded in culture, was the program and is the program linked to the company's core company values and one's individual values or kind of personal values, and that's really important in terms of embedding all of that in a culture, but that it resonates with your employees. And at the day, we're all human beings and everybody wants to be part of a culture and be part of a company where they feel they can make a difference and where they're treated fairly and where they're included. Only 10% felt it was personalized. So that personal touch is really important. It's, hey Thomas, great job today on kicking us off this morning, for example, like using somebody's name, reflecting on an occasion, adding in some detail where others can get to share, where that person feels like, wow, the person took the time to, send a message or send a video of congratulations to me as part of that recognition moment. That's a human moment that matters. That's really, really important. And then finally, having fairness and equity across the board. In some of our programs, some of the things that we review is, the language that's used. We look at things like gender, we look at things like race, and making sure from a DEI perspective that there's fairness there. Some companies want to identify that as part of their recognition program and have tools to help inform them as part of their overall recognition strategy to influence decisions and change things when it pertains to things like equity in the workplace, and equity is part of a recognition program. So a lot there to reflect upon and think about, but obviously the 5 key pillars are the key areas of focus that everybody should be focused on in order to reduce or mitigate some of the risks or challenges we spoke about earlier. Another key aspect of what a successful recognition program looks like from a company's perspective, from a leader's perspective, and from an employee's perspective is that it has to be accessible to all. It really should be a peer-to-peer recognition program, not just manager or top-down recognition program. The reason for that is, teams work closely together. And one thing we've seen massively over the course of the last couple of years through many of our client programs is the impact of team awards, where leaders or a member of a team, whether it's a project team or a functional team, are recognizing and celebrating work that's been done through team awards, through having a group, accessibility to give congratulations to a group of people rather than a one-to-one situation. So team awards have been massively successful for a lot of companies over the course, specifically of the last couple of years, whereby everybody just need to row together and move forward together to overcome everything that was obviously happening in the world and at work. So a couple of key points in relation to what a peer-to-peer recognition program looks like. Check-ins. So it's not just a manager to employee or team member check-in. Open check-ins. They create moments of connection. They create moments of the cultural moments that matter, if you like. Having everybody be aware and kind of having insight and perspective. We often hear of how people feel siloed and how people are not seeing each other, or even in general, just maybe organizations or teams, even teams in larger departments, for example, and having recognition and having regular check-ins. We kind of have these 3 little words that we use in our own organization: thank, talk, and celebrate. And that's about thanking, recognizing your team and one another for great work, going above and beyond. But the talk is those regular check-ins and having a technology to do that and enable that on a global scale is really, really important. And then celebrating all of those work-related milestones or personal milestones and bringing it all together under the one roof, I suppose, of a social strategic program is absolutely critically important and a recipe for success moving forward, as we all try to combat a lot of those challenges and overcome some of those key trends that we're seeing at the moment. So this is a display, if you like, of our own company. Actually, our awards suite, our program is called Spark at Work Human. And I took a snapshot here of some of those more human elements or those life elements in relation to some of our employees shared some of the puppy dogs and kittens that they got over the course of the last couple of years and took photos and shared them. And a lot of us have seen a lot of those pets actually on screen with Zoom, obviously, in people's homes, in their front rooms, in their kitchens, in their home offices, etc. But as part of that, this is kind of a representative segment, if you like, of what that can look like. We actually in our house got 2 little guinea pigs. We didn't go as far as a kitten or a puppy dog, but we went as far as 2 little guinea pigs in our house. I should actually add them onto these. But similar to other life events, on our platform and those that of our customers as well, you may see unions, you may see pictures of people getting married, people having new babies, and then you see all of the professional things, years of service timelines, also, as I mentioned, promotions, welcome new members to the team, etc., etc. So this is just one version of what that looks like. But what it does do is connect those that have similar interests or similar backgrounds or similar passions, if you like, whether it be on the sports side, whether it be on the pet side, whether it be on the family side, or obviously on the professional and on the work side. A lot of that is incorporated in terms of what that awards suite looks like. So just a little snapshot of that. This is an image of one of our programs that we launched in the early days of the pandemic. This is AstraZeneca's program called Catalyze. Hugely proud to be working with AstraZeneca. We work with a lot of companies that have been involved in creating vaccines or creating the medical equipment to combat the pandemic and get everybody healthy and safe again. Hugely proud of working with AstraZeneca in relation to this program. And what they wanted to do is, as they were working on, the vaccine themselves, is, to encourage that innovation, to encourage teamwork, to encourage urgency, that sense of urgency in what they were trying to do. And obviously positivity and engagement was a massive element to, being in that industry sector during the middle of a pandemic. And so huge positive impact in relation to that program and obviously that industry sector. And we're, as I said, hugely proud to work with AstraZeneca, and their program has been massively successful, rolled out over 100 countries. They have employees in over 100 countries, and they're all using this program to recognize one another and to share celebrations and to see what everybody's doing in all 100 quarters of the world that they're based. So hugely exciting program, just to give you an example of what that looks like. So wanted to now pivot a little bit in terms of the business impact of recognition. That was a lot about, I suppose, the human impact, the culture, the connection, the how we operate moving forward, how we should, what success looks like. Then there's the business and the financial aspect of what success looks like. So again, in terms of the research that we've done, if you shift from having a 1 in 4 or a quarter of your employees being recognized on a weekly basis, for example, shifting that ratio to 6 in 10, organizations can realize key positive financial and business metrics. So what we would see, and what we do see in terms of the research that we've done, is moving from 1 in 4 to 6 in 10, strongly agreed that they would see a 30% reduction absenteeism and a 21% reduction in shrinkage, which is massive. If you think about turnover in a lot of tech companies at the moment, it's up around 20-25%, which is massive. By reducing, by having a recognition program that touches on all of the key areas that I mentioned there, you will see these positive impacts as a result of that. So massively important in terms of what companies are facing at the moment in terms of presenteeism and presenteeism online, I would say as well, to a certain extent, but also in terms of turnover and retention. Again, a couple of more key indicators in relation to turnover. So let's take the example here, a 10,000 employee company at the bottom here. When you have a recognition program, a strategic recognition program across the whole organization, you will see 50% reduction in turnover cost in an organization of a 10,000 person organization. And what that equates to is, in pound sterling or in euro, there you'll see 12.8 million. That is the cost saving by having a recognition program. So thinking about what a percentage of payroll might be in terms of recognition that you might want to contribute to an organization, to your company's program rather, and what that could impact positively from a cost savings perspective is massive. And obviously larger organizations, the ratios increase in terms of those savings, and it just grows and grows in terms of economies of scale, obviously. So massive amounts to be focused on in relation to some of those costs that I think everybody's seeing as a result of the turnover at the moment. So I know there was lots in there. I rushed right through it. There was a lot of information I wanted to share in this segment of the session today. You can scan the QR code here to access the full report, or you can go to our website, workhuman.com/Gallup-report, where you can access the full report and obviously take time to reflect on all of that, reflect on your own company, reflect on your own culture, reflect on some of those key trends or those key challenges that your organization is facing, whether you're a HR leader or whether you're a business leader, and how the role of recognition can transform a workplace and transform it from a cultural perspective, from a performance perspective, from an inclusion perspective, from a wellness perspective, from a culture and connection perspective. So lots in there. Enjoy your reading. So I know we're coming up a little bit close on time, but yeah, delighted to answer any questions that you have. And I see there's probably a couple in the chat here. So moving from, I read the new generations are moving from Great Resignation to quiet quitting. Can I share some elements in relation to that? I mean, I think, and again, thinking about demographics, we do a lot of work with our Women and Allies ERG. We do a lot of work with a local organization here, but similarly in the States and where we're based, called Women Reboot, for example. And their particular organizations and associations that we're members of in relation to women leaving the workplace, perhaps at the start of COVID or during COVID as a result of, and this is specifically women in tech, just to give you a little bit of an example in relation to that. And what a lot of people, particularly female leaders or women in tech, what we saw was a shift in relation to increase in turnover, increase in resignations as a result of trying to do it all, juggle work, juggle a family at home when it was full lockdown, etc. And so we as an organization are trying to support, and I know many organizations are. Women Reboot, as I mentioned, is for women in technology entering back into the workplace from not having worked for a number of years, getting them back up to speed in relation to new technologies in culture and new ways of working. And so very focused on that. And I think, this is where the culture and connection piece comes in relation to quiet quitting, in relation to culture and connection, and having that sense of purpose, having that sense of belonging, having, whether it's a hybrid ways of working you're having, or whether it's fully remote, or whether it's fully on site, there's different elements in terms of your people strategy, in terms of your communication strategy, in terms of your technical strategy, and obviously your recognition strategy, and who your employees are, where they're at personally and professionally, and obviously try to do in terms of retaining the great talent that you have, having that loyalty, having that, because obviously we know what the negative impacts are in relation to all of that. So definitely seeing an increase in relation to, the great talent swap. Demographically, it's different as well. I gave a couple of examples there, and I suppose women returning in tech, but demographically as well, in the different age groups, you're definitely seeing a change in relation to, what preferences are for certain demographics that are not preferable for others. There's different ways that people like to work, and it's navigating through that change and trying to create a blended approach that's going to satisfy all, as I said, touching on all of the key elements that I've talked about in more detail in relation to that. And probably just have time for a quick question. Culture globally. Again, in the survey, you'll see some more information about that in relation to the differences geographically in relation to recognition and some of the challenges there as well. So Thomas, I'll hand it back to you. I know I'm up on time, so and we can come back and answer some of the other questions we didn't get an opportunity to answer just at this moment in time.
We'll definitely put people in touch with the Workhuman team to answer any questions and any queries. Thank you so much for this invigorating session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to go to our next session, which is going to be Martin Steiner. So just a quick intro. Martin is the Global Head of Employee Experience with Credit Suisse. Martin shall be speaking about driving employee experience through infusing human centricity into the bloodstream of the organization. Martin, the virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So very happy to be here. Yeah, it's actually quite a mouthful, right? How to infuse employee experience into the bloodstream of the organization. And I hope in the next 20 minutes, I will be able to give you a little bit of an idea of how to do that. Before I move on quickly into one of my passions, which of course is employee experience, what is or who is Credit Suisse, I think is really important, just to make sure that everybody knows that. We're a bank, we're Swiss, we're headquartered in Switzerland, we are 160 years old. We basically have about 50,000 employees. That's discounting our, you could say, flexible contingent workers population. And we are a global wealth manager. So we have a lot of ultra net individuals who invest with us. I really have the fundamental belief that what we develop for our people to take away strain, to take away their biggest frustrations, and making sure that the pain points are taken away, you always have to do that with the inclusion of the voice of your employees. Right, so not one time, not two times, but throughout the whole process, making sure that you constantly get that feedback to make sure that what you develop really adds value and takes away the strain and it alleviates basically the pain points. So to infuse employee experience into the bloodstream of an organization, I really believe that you need to play on different boards simultaneously. So one is you need to get experience data, and I'll explain very quickly what I mean with that, because it's not engagement data or operational data. It's a different kind of data that you need. And with that, you build empathy. The other thing is you need to start applying really an end-to-end approach, right? So you need to start working cross-functional. It's not only within HR that you can alleviate or solve basically problems, because you need to have the journey view, as many people have probably already heard when you talk about employee experience. The third one is also really important, which is about to position EX as a service. So you change the operating model. Currently within Credit Suisse, I've said that also to our CHRO, I don't believe in a new COE. I really do not believe that EX should be a COE. EX should be a service provider. And I'll explain that also in the presentation, what I mean with that. So first and foremost, why do you need experience data? Well, what I said about experience data is very clearly that it's a different kind of data. So engagement data, which is often used as being a data set for experience data or for employee experience, is actually not good, fit for purpose. Experience data is a different kind of data. So engagement data is the commitment that people feel towards the organization, or how, for example, leadership values resonate with your people. Now, experience data is the quality of interactions that your people are having every time they have a contact with the organization. It can be physical, it can be digital, it can be a combination of both. And you need to start understanding if that is really creating a great experience or not. So by having that kind of experience, you'll be able to really also answer these three questions. One is, as you can see, which interactions are most important and most painful to the employees, which in that context that I already mentioned, so physical, digital, and of course also human, are really creating frictions, and what are the experience attributes? So how are these experiences being perceived, and are they perceived as being intended? That then allows you to really inform your priorities. So what I often see within other peers within HR, they start with onboarding, for example, as a journey to start improving that. I don't believe in that. I really first and foremost need data to understand where are the most, you could say, moments that matter. So the key decisions in an experience that either make or break that. and which one have a disproportionate effect on the overall employee experience. And that's a really important way to take into account, because it means you start looking at it at an end-to-end, and you're also starting to apply basically Pareto principle, saying, okay, we're going to take this first, and we're going to redesign this, or we're going to improve this, as opposed to, let's start with onboarding. Because it could be that your performance management is having a disproportionate effect. And it could be that a certain moment that matter there is actually really, really creating strain and irritation and frustration. And so by solving that, you actually also take away a lot of that. Now, that doesn't mean you don't take onboarding after that, but it just means that you start understanding where do we need to start investing the people, the money, and also the time. It also helps you to set really great KPIs and start connecting it also to the business strategy. Now, there are different ways of basically looking at improvements, right? So one is this EX data that you will gather helps you to really start understanding, okay, is it within the remit that I possess, or is it within a different remit, and can they do it themselves? Or do they need capability? Is it tech, or is it is it in real life? Or is it a combination of both? And how do we need to make sure that we connect those touch points in the right way? So how to get that experience data? So first and foremost is you need to gather it, and you need to make sure that you have a measurement approach. It can be surveys, it can be observations, it can be all kinds of things, as long as it helps you to understand what the quality of your interactions are that the organization is offering to your people. Then, once you've done that, you need to measure the touch points, you need to measure the experience attributes, as I said, and also the moments that matter. That allows you to then create a baseline. Because what we're doing in Credit Suisse, we are moving towards having this actually every quarter, so I can actually, when we've done projects, show to the business that we're moving the needle. Because if you don't, you always get into a conversation which is about opinions, and everybody has an opinion, and about really beautiful PowerPoints, and everybody can make those, but if you haven't validated it, if you have experienced it, if you don't have the data, it's just a really nice PowerPoint or just an opinion. So basically, once you've converted that to insights and created these employee experience assets, like personas and the journeys and the user stories and the moments that matter, what I was saying is you need to have 3 data sets to create a robust insight. So if you only come to me with just one data set, I get feeble, because it means there can be a bias in there. So by creating 3 data sets, and it can be very low tech, you can do a survey, you can do interviews, contextual interviews, and you can do, for example, ethnography, which means you ask people basically to write down how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, or you do observations. I don't care. As long as there's 3 data sets that are linked to the same hypothesis, you're able then to say, okay, these insights are so robust that we can say, okay, this is a good starting point for us to look at, okay, these are the needs and the problems that people are having. Once you have that, you'll then be able to also identify the experiences with the highest friction, and also the ones that will give you basically the biggest impact if you redesign or improve them. Now, this kind of insights then help you to prioritize the journeys that you need to redesign. Like I said at the beginning, you can start with onboarding if the data shows you that that's actually something you need to take forward. You can then also decide on the quick wins, which means in which remit can we improve very quickly, and how do we do that? And you prioritize basically the moments that matter, that you want to redesign in such a way that they actually make the experience as opposed to break the experience. So then what's also really important, you have the data, you need to also have a basically holistic view if you want to improve this end-to-end in the employee experience. Like I already said, and some of you might also recognize this from Jacob Morgan, it's really about, all things, basically both digital and physical, and also the human space. And these spaces, they constantly interact and intersect. So therefore, you need to really start understanding, again, which are the moments that matter, that make the biggest impact, and also where on these intersections are things going well and where are they not going well. And so by taking this kind of view, you also start understanding that the employee experience is not a linear kind of thing. It is a holistic and should also be seen as a 3-dimensional space in which you, by data, start understanding where to start focusing. What's really important is that you then start redesigning. Like I said, redesign the employee experience with a repeatable and scalable approach, right? So you design, I really fundamentally believe that with every redesign of a journey, you start redesigning the company. The reason why, I'll come to that very quickly, is in 2 or 3 slides, but has to do with the fact that once you are redesigning a journey, you will also start looking at the processes that are underneath there. You will also start looking at the actors that are playing a role in that experience, and so forth and so forth. So basically, by having a scalable approach, which is really important, you are using the journeys as units of transformation. And by doing so, you're also changing the organization and changing the operating model, one journey by journey. Now, I've just highlighted very quickly here the process redesign. And the reason for that is like I already said, is you should always look at the employee journey as being the, you could say, top layer. So you have the top layer, and from the top layer, if you then look at it, there's a front stage. And the front stage is basically everything that the employee is experiencing when they interact with your organization, right? So it's your channels, it's the products, it's the actors, it's the touch points, interfaces, and basically really important. And it can also be seen by your employee. Now, the other thing, if you then go to a layer underneath there, which is basically the backstage, it is not visible for the employees, but we often forget that it actually is felt. We all know that we, for example, need to write or issue an IT ticket, and then some things happen with it. We don't exactly know what happens to it, but we feel, for example, that things don't work in the way that they should work. And it basically creates strain and it creates frustration. So although we don't see what's happening behind in the backstage, it still is creating an emotion with us as an employee. And then last but not least, which is the behind the scenes, which is basically your rules, your regulations, your policies, and your budgets. So if you look at this slide, you can really understand that if you're able to really take the employee journey view and the employee-centric view as your starting point, you will then be able to really start basically exposing all the things and all the organization parts that are working to make or break that experience. And by process redesigning these kinds of things, you will also be able to really then improve and take away some of the pain points and the strain of your employees. And at the same time, basically simplify and automate many of these processes that are currently in place to, at one point, create a much better employee experience for your employees. Now, last but not least, I was already talking about that I really believe that EX should be positioned as a service provider. And the reason for that is that if you create another COE or an SME, because I'm not really a fan of the ORIC model, because the ORIC model has served its purpose. Nonetheless, it is now basically also creating and maintaining certain silos which you don't want, which are basically also the enemy of employee experience. Because employee experience is about not creating another silo, not creating another COE. It is about breaking that and going across that. So what I mean with that is that if you want to create an end-to-end view, you need to start working together. So in this case, for example, learning and development needs to work with performance management, and that needs to work with compensation to make sure that within the whole journey, because that's how your employees view this, you create a favorable experience. There needs to be a clear performance management cycle. It doesn't matter how you implement that, but it needs to be clear to them, and it doesn't need to create any surprises. And then when that's connected to the conversations, that should actually be congruent to what has been communicated. And also goes for the learning and development. So as you can see, there's a lot of touch points in such a journey. Just as an example, in such a journey that actually asks, in this case, already HR to work together. I'm not even talking about IT. I'm not talking about also, for example, bringing in communications, corporate communications, marketing, people that have certain expertise that that helps you to create a proposition that is congruent and that is consistent and that basically is very clear to your employee and reinforces what they expect and also reinforces the communication and what you've communicated. So it's really important, just to highlight that, is to actually position EX as one, a service that provides transparency, that enables you to set the right priorities for you as an organization. Two, to have basically the capability that you can then bring in to agile teams who work on journeys that provide, you could say, employee experience thinking, understanding how to build these assets, how to work with data, those kinds of things. And then last but not least, also to have EX basically delivered as a service to measure the business impact, that whenever you make improvements or you redesign journeys or moments that matter, that you can show basically from the data that you've moved the needle and also what that means in terms of, for example, cost saving or creating heightened productivity, etc., etc. So as you can see here, it shouldn't be working as a standalone COE, but instead it should work as a service provider, helping the organization to embrace an end-to-end view and also taking employee experience seriously. Very quickly, 2 minutes on the last things. So just a case study, very quickly, what we did is we looked at, okay, so if we want to onboard new line managers, how do we then do this? Now, in this project, we basically introduced the journey mindset, which already showed the different parties where in this journey they should work. The journey was set up from data, so there was a survey done, there were interviews done, and there were also some observations, which allowed us really then to create a journey view from the point of view of the line managers, and then also bringing in the different parties that were involved in every stage of that journey. We also created, in this case, proto-personas. We started with 2, but from the data and from the iterative approach, we actually found out that there was a 3rd one. So we made sure that that also came in. And last but not least, we also constantly went back to, you could say, our user group, which were 5 line managers, representing also the different personas, to make sure that the propositions that we developed throughout that journey, the products, the services, were constantly being validated and getting feedback basically from them to make sure that they worked and they were adding value. Last slide, if it comes, and then I'll have some questions. So this is a different project. We are currently implementing a human capital management system, and what we did is we again went out to our employees and asked them basically, what do you think about our HR services and products? And from there on, we developed, in this case, EX assets, employee experience assets, so the personas, which basically is who are you designing for? What I really liked, or what I want to highlight in this slide, is it shows you how you build empathy and how you basically also transfer that into all the employee experience assets. And that's a really important one. So the personas are who are you designing for, right? The employee lifecycle, well, we all know what that represents. It's the lifecycle stages. Then the moments that matter, which are basically the moments that can have a disproportionate effect on the overall employee experience. Then we break basically the journeys also up we also mapped out the user journeys to be really understanding the current employee experience within those journeys, the moments that matter. And then to make sure that we created something, we would actually we created something that is people-centric or employee-centric. We then looked at solutions and making sure that we broke that down into user stories to make sure that what we developed within the HCM SaaS and the implementation was constantly taking the needs into account of our people. Last but not least, also what you can see here is that the personas are already basically showing a representation of our global workforce. So also already bringing in D&I in there, because it's important to have a representation that shows our workforce. Apologies for the sound, and let's see if we can take some questions now.
Martin, thank you. We have time for probably one question. There's a question from Elisa. She was asking a little bit earlier in the presentation if your budget is 50% from IT and 50% from HR, but where does your actual team sit, and how do you work with communications, since there's also a head of employee engagement, she believes, and how big is your team to allow this to work?
Yeah, so the team I'm currently basically getting is a small team. It's not so big. It's about 4 to 5 people. Agile teams. So we have agile teams, and we staff them not only with HR, we staff them cross-functional. I work very closely with the head of employee engagement, of course, and also work very close with the head of corporate communications, just to make sure that we really connect on these kinds of spaces. And last but not least, I have a dotted line, you could say, to our IT boss, and I now sit within the people within the COO organization and strategy and transformation. That's where I sit.
Martin, thank you so much. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome our panelists. We shall continue the sessions with a panel discussion. We have Nayara. Nayara is the head of employee experience at Randstad, Spain. David Burka is the head of global talent acquisition and employee brand for Workhuman, and Olivier Dubisson is the head of people experience at Novartis. Hi, everyone. Good to have you on board.
Hey, Thomas. Good to be here too.
How have you enjoyed the sessions so far?
Yeah, really interesting. I think just kind of highlighting the importance of data. Although employee experience can be difficult to quantify, very subjective. The importance of leaning into data to make informed decisions, and the abundance of data from both presentations was phenomenal. So really interesting.
Yeah. Great. We have 30 minutes for this panel discussion, and we shall go through a number of different topics. So please, if you have something to say within that topic, just please go ahead or reflect on the question. The first question we have is, with more people working remotely or hybrid, how has this impacted the employee experience at your organization?
So I guess for 20 years, this is what Workhuman has. It's our mission, it's our purpose. So I think where everyone faced struggles with the change that the pandemic presented, we had the benefit of 20 years of data and insights, in this field. And I think fundamentally, the research that we've done tells us that people feel more connected to their colleagues than to culture, right? Which shouldn't be a surprise, because people are the living embodiment of, the culture that we have in place. So for us, the primary, objective should be, however people are working, whether that's fully remote, hybrid, fully on site, it's making sure that we are facilitating the opportunity for genuine human interactions and connections. When people can connect with each other, and importantly be seen, for their whole self and for the value they bring to the organization in terms of the work they do, but also the impact on the people around them. That's when the magic happens. So I think trying to find ways for people to connect in a meaningful way is paramount. So clearly our recognition platform and programs allow us to do that, and given that this is our space, we're super users of our product. So when I'm trying to explain it to older relatives who don't really understand technology, I kind of call it a happiness machine. So it might surprise you to know that like every one of our employees last year was recognized, through our platform. But we had a recognition moment every 2 seconds last year. So there's that tells us a lot of things. Adoption, high adoption of these programs is really, really important. So if you can get a program that allows people to connect with each other, to communicate in a human way, as Niamh mentioned, seeing those life events as well as the work and service touch points, when you combine all of those two things, or all of those things together, you get a connected, engaged, and happy set of employees who are not only contributing to the culture and the business, but also providing support and human companionship to those around them as well. So I think for us, it's really just double down on our belief that connecting people through their passions and as people is the way to drive a positive experience.
2 seconds every
Gratitude moment every 2 seconds. Yeah,
that's really amazing, and that's really showing that you're really engaging with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Olivier, do you have anything to add from your side to this from Novartis?
I think that for us, we of course have been looking at the impact overall to the company. I mean, we learned a lot during the COVID times. What has happened, I have to say, is that the moments that matter that Martin was sharing are fundamental and foundational to any approach about employee experience. What we are looking at is the moments that matter, that will really matter. And there is an evolution of this model now that we need to consider as companies. There is the moment of belonging. So how do I belong to the company? That's a moment that does not exist in the moments that matter frameworks, which we have been studying and developing, that I developed as well, many years ago. The moment of teaming, which is even more important because teams are spread around the world. And how do we create teaming in this new world of hybrid, remote, or fully on-site? Is different to the way that we used to do it. There are new codes to learn. There are new skills to learn. And then the moment of leadership. And the moment of leadership is not just for managers. It's a moment of leadership for everyone. Because as much as managers need to be clear on expectations and set the expectations for their teams, the associates, the employees also have certain leadership roles to play. Like, how do I address it? How do I respectfully challenge? How do I respectfully bring the discussion to a new level? So these, for me, are the 3 moments that matter that we are going to see in organization that needs to be developed further. Moments of belonging, moments of leadership, and moments of teaming. We are talking about connectedness. We are talking about trust. There is no better opportunity today. I think it's a unique opportunity through what happened during COVID, that we have accelerated a transformation that was already in progress. It's just happened that we have accelerated it massively because of what happened in the last 2 years. But employers have to adapt to it, and I believe that we have to move now in a new level of maturity from the employee experience perspective by focusing on these 3 moments that matter. But don't forget the fundamentals. They are there for a reason. You have to do the job well enough. But you have to start focusing on what then brings the differential of your company from an employee experience perspective.
I like these pillars that you mentioned: belonging, leadership, and teaming. Nayara, do you have anything to add to this at all?
I agree with my colleagues. I think, in fact, there is a challenge in how we work, how we create culture, and how we lead. Also, like my colleagues were saying, and yeah, of course, moments that matter change. It's not. I find that it's not only when we talk about hybrid, whether we go 2 to 3 days. That it's not the conversation here, but just in the points that they were pointing out, right? So that's where everything happens, and it's much deeper than a policy, and it really requires redesigning work. And it's not only about the moments that matter, but also about how we work as a company and how we are productive as a company. So are both pillars that you need to align. So the experience for people and how the company operates in a new way in this new context.
Indeed. Let's jump to the next question. I'm just conscious of time. How can HR executives identify and support the well-being of their vulnerable or disengaged home-based employees?
I'm happy to start this one, maybe, and then pass over to you, Nara.
Okay.
So for us, what we identified is that we have a big D&I. It used to be D&I, now it's DE&I, Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And what we measured during the COVID times is that those that are belonging to minorities, that could be various different situations being in the minority, that could be about struggling at home, family, it could be about minorities that we know, LGBTQ+, etc. What we found is that those minorities felt more included during COVID. And that has been a massive learning for us. So how can we use that element, and catalyze the energy of the organization to say, well, we learned so much, do we need to revert to the ways of working that were in the past, that maybe people felt different about it, or can we leverage some of the learnings so that we can actually continue on this journey of inclusion for everyone?
So I think when it comes to supporting people, whether they are working from home or not, it's very important to have a culture or to create an environment where they can really work and do their best. And for that, you need like things that we already said, like belonging, you need like team purpose, and you need psychological safety. Also, like Nayan said in her presentation, you also need recognition and things like that. At the end, we are talking about human needs, right? So belonging doesn't require all this physical proximity. Of course, it helps, but it requires like a different mindset, and it requires mastering some human skills also as leaders and as managers, like empathy and like context sensing and collaboration and things like that. So as an HR executive, I think we can help employee experience by supporting our managers, because they play a pivotal role in employee experience. And when you support them and then also upskill in those human skills, this could be like a start, like to create this part of well-being around psychological safety, well-being, purpose, belonging that we were already commenting.
David, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think, just to add to that, I think, not to be, it's not just semantics, but in the question, the best way to support disengaged people is not to find a mechanism to address the disengagement, it's to re-engage, and fundamentally people, particularly home-based workers, they just want to feel like their employer cares about them. They want to be seen. And I think it's that separation, that physical separation is increases that feeling that I'm not seen. So, again, programs of recognition or gratitude, or just finding ways to connect people through those moments that matter, again, which is a recurring theme, just allow people to be seen. So I know Niamh touched on some of the data earlier on, but where there's a peer-to-peer element for that gratitude and recognition in place, people are twice as likely to feel like they're seen, like they're appreciated. And when it comes from a manager in the same period, it's 3 times as likely. So if I feel like I'm seen, if I feel like I'm valued, if I feel like I'm present, even though I'm separated physically, that helps me feel like I belong, which helps me feel, appreciated and fosters my well-being. So I think it's being really intentional and purposeful about how we allow people to be seen when they're not in the room.
Yeah,
it's so important in this hybrid world. It's so important. Do I matter? That's the key question when you're looking at. Sorry,
Thomas, in line with what David was commenting, we also see in research that networks have shrunk. So all the things that David is commenting is very, very important, because you need to be seen, and that happens within a smaller group of people nowadays, and with your direct manager and with your immediate team. So that's why all those practices are more important than ever when you are in an hybrid or remote model.
That's really interesting, because I think if you have a mechanism for these programs to be digital and therefore accessible by everyone, some really interesting research, the relationship between gratitude and dopamine, but one of the high bounce factors for that is observing gratitude. So you're not even in the giving or receiving, you're just observing, and just by association, it boosts your engagement, your happiness. So I think finding a way to connect people, but and build out those personal networks that are shrinking, as you said, Niara. But if that can be part of a wider societal initiative in the organization, you're going to get exponential benefits as well.
There's something here that I hope the audio is better. So let me know in the chat if you hear me better.
It is better.
There is something here that both of you, Naira and David, are mentioning, which I think is a bit of a challenge. So the networks are shrinking in organizations. Also, the type of networks that people have. We have measured the fact that people are most likely to go with people that are like them. which was not the case before. No, so the importance of the social connections and the community creations, and I think there is a role for digital platforms to help with that, because we today are depending on algorithms and digital platforms which are helping. Be a recognition platform as an example, right, David, in your field. However, no, we need to try to find ways for people to go beyond the boundaries of the people that are like them. And this is something that has massively accelerated and changed during COVID. And we don't have yet a recipe. I think that there is something about how do we foster communities, and communities that are going to extend the level of, I would say, similarities that people have, so that they can also explore polarities. Because at the moment, they are not exploring polarities. They remain in the same circles that are like them and think like them. And so it's easy. There is no effort required. But we need to find a way to be able to really mix the people more, so that the networks continue to expand, and they expand with variety, with diversity. I think that's super, super important. And today, digital tools are not really meant to do that. So is there a way that we can encourage those companies like yours, David, to really create that moment of community that we need to start to foster even more important today than ever, actually?
Yeah, just a quick add. Oh, sorry, Nara, go ahead.
No, go on. So I was just going to say that it's a combination of technological power, but intentional design. So technology itself won't bring anything, and you really need to decide how you want to intervene, so that what Olivier was saying happens, and it doesn't just happen by default, right? Yeah, like you really designed it.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, one of the things that we did this year, which was separate, was we rolled out a program where people opted in to add some things about themselves to their email signature before their job title. So talk about 2 or 3 things about who they are and what, you know, their passions are. And what that allowed us to do was, I mean, first of all, it gave people a view of the human outside their work circle. So, you know, in advance of the first Zoom meeting, they've had a couple of email interactions and got to learn a bit about each other. But then what it also allowed us to do then is look at the shared passions of people. So, you know, kind of to your point, Olivier, it's connecting people by passions, but they're very different people with different views, but they have a shared or common interest. So just by fostering that connection through one shared interest, it did allow them to meet people outside their circle, share experiences. So you get very different people, but who are united by one common interest, which just promotes that engagement. So that initiative was received really, really well. We had a huge sign up for that, and it's made for some really, really interesting conversations. With the interest of time, I don't have time to share today, but just people learning some really surprising and funny things about each other, which was really cool.
Thank you, David. Let's move on to our next question. How can HR leaders assure a level of trust and productivity amongst their remote-based employees?
So yeah, so the 2 questions about trust and about productivity. And when it comes to trust, I don't know, I think remote work has been crucial, right, to the survival of many companies during this period. And most of employees proved that they were there working hard and really engaged, right? So, and that's why a lot of companies could go through the cycle. And also the neuroscience of trust showed that high trusting companies, they are more productive and more engaged also. So my view on this is trust people until they prove different, really. And this is just a value and a choice. This is not something that can be designed. This is really either a company value, a personal value, you know. And so when it comes to trust, this is really a choice. Then when it comes to productivity, I think this is a completely different thing. And for me, the key word here is intentional design, right? And in this sense, I really like Linda Grayton's work, and she encouraged for this hybrid and employee experience situation to understand really how our organization functions. So you need to understand what are the behaviors that enables productivity. You also need to understand how the knowledge happens and the networks. And on the other hand, you also need to understand the people. So it's not just about understanding the people or not just understanding the company. It's like trying to understand both to assure the best way and trying to find alignment between both of them, right? So when it comes to productivity, first you really need to design thoughtfully why you're going to the model you are going, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, or whatever, and then really go to, once you've done that part, go more to the cultural part. And one of the things that helps to productivity, whether it's remote or not, is to focus on outcomes. So that's not secrets, and it also helps in this context. So, but I think it comes from there, because you cannot be productive just saying you make such a policy, we go remote or we go, and you also need to be very, very intentional about your culture, how belonging happens, how purpose happens, how you're going to communicate, how are you going to booster the connections, and all these examples that also David was putting and sharing with us. So that's a bit.
I was going to say, Nara, and I hope again the audio is better now than
Yeah,
it was
it
before. Joy of live events and technology. So depending on that today. But so are the employees of our companies, right? So we have to remember that, right? Everyone is at the same place. And being in the office does not always provide, better technology or better infrastructure. I wanted to say that, I'm very, very conflicted in my own mind about measuring productivity, because I believe that will be solving a lot of things, and also proving to our leaders in our company that the productivity has not decreased because people have worked remotely. And then I read so much online about productivity and big brotherhood and stuff that needs to happen in companies. And my reflection is the following: if someone has ever managed to measure productivity and link it to performance in their companies and the share price, please be my guest. Give me the formula. I wish there was one, but at least I've not yet found one. However, if we were to measure outcomes, which is performance of the company, performance of the teams, and how they behave and work together, and to do that in a way that invites them to create impact in their companies, I think there is, but which is where you are going, Naira, in terms of don't focus on the productivity element, focus on the output. So the input is productivity, the output is what matters. If we don't leave people some room to be able to explore and learn and do other things, they are going to burn out. So I think that the quest for productivity is a quest of anti-well-being. I think we need to look at organization as its entirety and start moving away from productivity and moving towards the output, and then create programs to respect the employees.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, for many years we've been pioneering that human workplace, and one of the products in the Work Human Cloud is our conversations product, which is really pushing away from those reflective yearly performance processes, and having performance conversations in real time, weekly or bi-weekly. That really came into its own when COVID hit and there was distributed and blended workforces, because two reasons, right? It allowed us to ensure that we are talking about work and deliverables and output in an agile way. So priorities change, things change, and if you're working from home and you're not around people and you're not getting that latest bit of information in terms of where the work needs to be tweaked, having those really frequent check-ins allows you to just keep on top of what's the priority right now. It lets me feel that the work I'm doing is exactly what I should be doing. But importantly, going back to that human connection, it's also a really high frequency of touch points with your leadership or your colleagues, where you have the opportunity to talk about the work, but I may spot something. I might say, I seem a bit down today, or you seem a bit happy. Tell me what it is, but whatever it is, it's just much more frequent opportunities to keep the work on track, keep that real-time feedback, but also more and more human touch points. So I think that type of model and that type of frequency, just with the distributed workforce and really changing priorities in agile workplaces, I think that for us has when you talk about a direct link to productivity, our data shows that really clearly.
Thank you.
So I'll send you the recipe, Olivier. We have it cracked, we think.
And I think it links into our next question: is what new methods should we be using to measure the quality of remote and hybrid employee experience? Would you like to start on that, Olivia?
Thomas, we have a big echo, from me, so you might need to repeat that question, and we all go on mute, so that we hear you well.
What new methods should we be using to measure the quality of remote and hybrid employee experience?
It's while I think there is a lot of new methods, but do we need new methods? That's always my first question. What's the problem we try to solve? And we try to measure something. Everyone in the past, every organization always had some workers that were remote or some workers that were working hybrid in the definition that many organizations have. So what is the problem we try to solve? And I think that if we are identifying the problem we try to solve, which is engagement, belonging, the purpose of the company, culture, then do we need new methods, or organizations already have methods that help them to appreciate, because you can't measure it, you can appreciate a measurement of what that looks like. And I believe that each organization has to look into the mirror, into what's important to them. Is it belonging? Is it engagement? Is it culture? And others that translate into their perspective. But I don't see that we need forcibly a new method to measure something which has existed before, which has just been amplified. If it was brand new, completely brand new, okay. But I think in this case, I cannot say that what we are experiencing is totally brand new. It's different and accelerated and the unique moment in time. But what we already have in place, at least at Novartis, I believe helps us already to measure and capture enough information to help us make decisions about our employees in the future and the employee experience.
Nayar, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with Olivier about when it comes to measure itself. I think the metrics could be valid, so engagement metrics, because at the end, engagement is the output of the experience. What I think we need to work differently, and not only because of the hybrid work, but because of the evolution, is what also Martin was saying, is how we develop the experience of our employees, how we collect data, not only engagement data, but experience data, and also how we design the experience. And there comes co-creation, testing, learning, also being okay with not knowing, and also experimenting a little bit. So not doing really big things for a whole company, but listening and then also making a small experiments, and when they work out, so there you can really work the experience differently. So collect experience data, play around it, to say it somehow, and then deliver differently with co-creation, which is basic, I think, not so much top-down like in the past in HR, but a lot bottom-up initiatives in the design. And the measure at the end, it could be the same, because engagement is the result of your experience, right? Of your satisfaction with the interactions you have. So that would be my point.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more really to be said there. I think to Olivier's point, we're not measuring different things, but what we are doing is trying new initiatives, trying new ways to see, can we engage people in different ways. So I think the things that we would look at, that we look at closely are adoption, firstly. Like, so what are we trying to do? Are people engaging with it? If not, why? Let's figure that out. There's no point rolling out these big initiatives that we think are brilliant that people just don't engage with. And then as part of that, is it equitable? Like, we've some Gallup research that we show that, people's experience in recognition or other programs, depending on where they are on demographics or marginalized communities, their view of how equitable the program is can be markedly different from, how we see it. And then I think the ultimate metric really for all of this stuff really is in our retention data, so are people staying with our business longer as a result of the things that we are trying to do to address their experience changes, to kind of address the work changes and that disconnection, which we know, some people find problematic. So yeah, like Olivier say, not really reinventing the wheel, but just making sure that we're being really diligent about the measurements we're making and the insights we're taking from that data as we try new things. So I think we all have a lot to learn still.
Thank you, David. I think it is time. This is all we had time for. It's been wonderful to have you all. Nayara, David, Olivier, thank you so much for your time and for your valuable insights. And I trust that everyone can get in touch with you on LinkedIn and get in touch with David and the WorkHuman team if they have any questions regarding the session. Now I would like to thank everyone for their time with us. The next event shall be happening on the 15th of September, which is on culture. Please do join us and Workhuman on that session as well. You will have an opportunity to get the slides. If you haven't downloaded it from the handouts, then please do get in touch with us, and we can make that available. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the Workhuman team for supporting this event, and see you next time.